Maradona passed yesterday. What has been the mood like in Argentina?
Well, a lot of sadness. I think there was a lot of sadness. He was a really fantastic player. He was probably the best, or maybe in the top two. I don't know. You can argue about Pelé, but or Maradona. Different times, different skills. Two top probably, but they was on the top of the top. I think Maradona was really, for us was very important what he achieved in '86 with a national jersey. He was the captain at the time, and when became champions of the World Cup in '86 in Mexico.
Is he seen as a hero in the country?
Well, I think they see it as a sort of a sport hero. He's an icon of the sport. He was, as I said, probably among the top two in the world of all times, and probably he will be remembered like a let's put it, a sports hero.
Yes. What do you think is the perception of Mr. Maradona in the UK, right?
No, I think the perception is largely football centric. You know, he was a genius as a footballer, and much admired, and in a way it was a pity that he actually never played in the English Premier League. You know, we had Ardiles and Villa with Tottenham. You know, we had Mascherano and Tevez, and that really is largely attributable to what Maradona actually did. There was this one incident which has always been controversial because it followed not long after the Falklands War, that it was hyped up in the media as well as though this was a battle of a different kind. So this whole episode of the Hand of God match. But a lot of people then forget the second goal, which was a classic Maradona, where he just dribbled the ball from the halfway line himself and just took it right into the penalty area and then scored. But I think what changed football fundamentally with Maradona is this, that prior to his coming to the fore as he did, football was largely seen as a game for big, muscular players, the Ronaldos of this world, or the Beckenbauers. And in the UK, it was very much a physical sort of game, and it was pretty unsophisticated. The crosses would come into the box, and a giant would just head it in. Suddenly, you had players of his height, low gravity players, who really were quite a handful to deal with. Their ball control made it very difficult to come at them, and then it was very difficult to get them off the ball without fouling them. And what do you see now? You see people like Mohamed Salah, you see people like Raúl just before, you see Luis Suarez. It has become very easy for people of Maradona's height to actually become a problem. You know, they're quite a handful. So I think the nature of the game changed with Maradona. And the other thing I think I love about him is that no matter how old he was, and even very recently, and whether he was a fan or a manager or a player, he almost had a childlike enthusiasm for the game. He just this was his passion. He loved it, which is why people loved him in return. So though I think you'll see that the coverage that Maradona's passing has received in the UK is nothing other than recognizing him as a football legend, with a bit of teasing about that one incident.
What kind of celebration do you think should be given to Maradona?
Well, the government has already decided to put the 3 days of flag on half-mast, and well, he's already now laid his remains in the National Palace, and we have just established 3 days of mourning. Doesn't mean that it's not just they're not going to work. Here I am working, but there are some activities to remember him.
The 1986 game
Yeah.
was shrouded in controversy
Yeah.
because of the war with England.
Well,
the fight over the islands.
Well, but that was 4 years before.
4 years before, but it was still you know, background in the whole game. Even Maradona said it.
Well, you know, people say a lot of things, but the most important thing that was at that point was they need to beat the British or the Belgians or whoever was there in the quarterfinals to get to the semifinals and get to the final.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to put the things in context. This was just a sports match. Of course, there are people that are, as you can say, anything, and the wounds of the war were very recent. But the important thing was this is an important sport event, and if you remember well, when the new modern Olympics started, the sport was something that instead of trying to divide people, was to get people together. That was the philosophy, and the Greek philosophy on the Olympic Games. But basically,
have the people of Argentina got over this whole fight over the islands?
Well, you can imagine the war is always a painful experience. But I think you should avoid mixing things. Sports one thing, and the war is another thing. So,
but in general, have they gotten over it?
Well, let's say that yes. There are, of course, for the veterans, they have it very close, and we don't stop claiming for the island, but through peaceful ways, and that's part of my job.
Do you think that it will ever be given to Argentina?
We hope to do that, and we are working on that, and basically, again, through diplomatic means, and I think it's important to try to find coincidence more than differences. If you just enhance the difference, you will never get an agreement. You have to find common ground.
What is the UK's relationship with the Falklands Islands right now?
Well, it's an issue that is totally resolved. There was a referendum in the Falkland Islands, which was as close to 100% as you like. So this basis of people being able to determine their future and how they're governed is resolved. So the idea that somehow Britain is going to hand over the Falkland Islands to anybody else when everybody on the island basically wants to keep it as it is, that is how it will remain. And I think our relationship with Argentina has evolved. It is on a far better footing, we can see a different kind of narrative. And one also has to go back to the origins of that conflict. It was suddenly manufactured because General Galtieri was having trouble at home. A classic response of anybody with domestic problems is to find an overseas issue but they found in the British government and in Margaret Thatcher in particular a very resolute individual. I sincerely hope that we will never go back to a conflict situation ever again. But the primary factor, which goes back to the question I answered before about democracy, if we believe in democracy, then the will of the people must prevail.
You said there was a referendum, but there's still some persons in the international community who are saying that Falkland Islands is so far from Britain, we should just give it to Argentina.
It's simply off the agenda. It will never happen.
Do you sense that there's any bitterness from Argentina's perspective towards UK over the Falkland Islands?
I think it certainly was stepped up during the conflict itself, but as I said, if you look at the modern discussion that we have with Argentina, it is very different. I mean, we don't have that same conversation anymore. And I think there are different kinds of ties that we have with Argentina that people don't talk about a lot. I mean, we are a major importer of their products. There are also other connections that exist. There are British investors in Argentina. The banking system has done a lot with each other.